nostalgic movie review from Nerdy Married Man.
Oh, hello everybody.
Hello and good afternoon or morning or evening or whenever you're watching this.
Or listening to this. You might not want to see my ugly face. That's fine. I get it. It just makes me a little sad. But this is New and Nostalgic. Movie reviews from Nerdy Married Men. We are both nerdy and married.
Yes, we are.
I'm Steve McGee.
I'm David Olivier.
And
Welcome.
Each week, we always talk about, we review a movie, and we tell you what movie we're going to review so you guys can watch along with us. And then we go and tell you all the things we like about it. We talk about the cast, we talk about the Rotten Tomato score, audience and critic, tell us some fun facts, some highlights, some downfalls, and we give our scores and then a spoiler and ending review.
Yeah, and obviously today we are talking about Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yes, which was initially David's good pick movie.
As you'll learn, that has shifted a little.
Yes. So, this is a movie we were really excited about. Obviously, it's a new movie. It's not as new when this podcast actually comes out for you guys, but it's still probably only like a month and a half or 2 months out.
Yeah. Would you like to read the plot synopsis?
Sure. Thor enlists the help of Valkyrie, Korg, and his ex-girlfriend Jane Foster to fight Gore, the God Butcher, who intends to make all the gods extinct. Really short synopsis there. It's pretty accurate.
Yeah, pretty accurate to the movie. It's not a bad movie. It's also not an amazing movie. The cast in it, we got, of course, Chris Hemsworth returning. Got Natalie Portman.
Whoop, whoop.
It's so good to see her back on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like she really enjoyed this role. We got Christian Bale, the man, the myth, the legend. He is just phenomenal as Gore. We'll go back into that.
Yes.
We got Tessa Thompson returning, and then Taika Waititi as Korg, and then fun fan pick. I don't know.
Fun.
Fun is a word. Russell Crowe as Zeus, and it is
awful.
Yeah.
I am not gonna sugarcoat this at all. Russell Crowe should not be in the MCU, and Russell Crowe as an actor in recent years has downfalled hard. I hated him in Les Mis. I hate him in this.
He looks like he was having fun with the role, and originally from the trailers, I was okay with Zeus, and they made a mockery. They made a joke about it, and it doesn't go over well.
No,
This is of course 2022 movie, just came out, PG-13. It clocks in at just under 2 hours, hour 58 minutes.
For this movie, it's got a Rotten Tomato score of 66%, which I think is the second or third lowest Marvel rated movie.
It's pretty down there for the Marvel movies.
And then a 78% audience score, which I don't know how the average audience score is that high. Besides the Taika Waititi lovers.
Yeah, and probably a mix of, Chris Hemsworth. And, I mean, this movie definitely has divided audiences. Some people actually, really love it. Some people really hate it. I'm in the middle. I'm a little bit. I think I liked it more than I hated it. I probably liked it more than Steven liked it.
There's one of the things that sorry, I don't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good.
One of the things that I've kind of noticed is Phase 4 has been severely divisive with every one of the movies.
It has.
Like it's the same thing with Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Even No Way Home had a lot of divisiveness towards it. Like not as much. Obviously, that one's still looked at as one of the greatest, but like. All of these Phase 4 things have been really divisive, like Hawkeye series. There's like all of these things have just been like.
There's not really one Phase 4 project, TV show or movie, that is decided upon fans that as either all liking it or all disliking it.
Yeah.
It's very divisive phase, and it kind of shows in the way the showrunners do it. It almost seems like Marvel Studios is not really sure where they're wanting to go with Phase 4. And we all know, like, the gist. Phase 4 is working towards the Secret Wars, and they're bringing, Kang the Conqueror into it, and they're eventually going to reveal their Thanos-level threat. But as of right now, it is just kind of all over the place, and they're exploring various ideas of the multiverse.
My thing, because I even saw a thing with Kevin Feige talking about how this phase has been really divisive, and he says there's going to be projects that like really work well and mesh with each other and have a lot of coherency between the two, and then there's got to be ones that are going to be standalone, like Moon Knight, like and stuff is right now. So a lot of these things are going to have some interweaving and some of them aren't. And I think a lot of the things that is I think the fans are really drastically making these worse than they are, because they're expecting them to be all Thanos level Infinity Saga films. Well, when like if you look back at phase 1 and phase 2, there were some shit movies in those phases too.
Yeah, and got to give Marvel credit. They are working hard, and some of these movies do feel by the numbers for some people, but honestly, I'm kind of a Marvel super fan over here, but so I have a little bias, but I do think it has potential, and there are parts in every project that Phase 4 has produced has some really good moments. I don't think there is one that has no good moments.
Moon Knight for me is one of the best. WandaVision is up there, and
I when on the movie side of things, I loved Shang-Chi.
Oh, Shang-Chi,
great,
amazing
film. I feel like that one kind of brought me back to the feeling that some of the Phase 1 films had, like Iron Man, Captain America, and I know that's kind of putting it up on a pedestal a little, but I think that Shang-Chi was a genuinely, I think you're right to do so.
Like, one of the things that Marvel's really docked for in a lot of movies is how much their action scenes are cut and edited to shit. And if you watch a lot of like foreign action movies, especially a lot of movies like The Raid and The Raid 2,
yep,
and stuff like that, you see these action scenes in
nice
movies,
takes.
or any Jackie Chan movie even, where these action scenes, they're actually hitting, they're actually fighting, it's actually choreographed. It's not a cut between each punch. Like, there shouldn't be 10 cuts as I swing my arm. Like, I know that arm didn't make contact. You didn't show contact. Like, show me something. You have all this CG work that is some of the best CG work we've ever seen, and you can't even make a fight. Like, and that's what Shang-Chi did, that I think is the big highlight of what that movie is the way it is the fight scenes in that movie were extremely well choreographed. Like, that bus fight scene is one of the best fight scenes in all of Marvel. Like, ever.
Yeah, it's
like,
a phenomenal fight scene. And I'm getting back into Thor with fight scenes, like kind of bouncing into the highlights.
Yeah,
this movie does have decent fight scenes. They're not amazing, but they're not bad. But I guess I'm kind of fast forwarding a little.
I will say, like, for highlights for me, the camera work and the aesthetics in this movie are fantastic.
Oh yeah, the cinematography is great.
Fucking the fight they have. We'll go a little bit more into it in the spoilers, but they have on the Dark Planet,
on the moon there,
on that moon where everything's black and white, but when they're doing stuff, it's shining colors. It is gorgeous,
visually beautiful, just very nice.
Like, that is one of the best scenes I've seen in Phase 4.
And we will definitely. I have kind of an idea about that. Once we get in the spoiler talk, we'll talk about that. Yeah. But I think it is a great scene.
There is a lot of things, like when they were showing where all the gods were, and they were showing all the different gods. There's a part of me, because I'm a big fan of the game Smite, Battleground of the Gods, where it has all these gods from all these different pantheons. So I was like, oh, that's Guan Yu. Oh, that's that person. Oh, that's that person. And I was like, oh my god, like they made so many iconic characters, and they made them look so well that I recognized a lot of them just in the backgrounds.
Oh yeah,
and it was really cool. So there are some good highlights for this movie. There's some things like the title of this movie being what it is, and we'll get into that in the spoilers, is annoying to me.
Yeah, the movie definitely had a few downfalls. Definitely some of the too much comedy. A lot of the comedy fell flat.
I do not like Taika Waititi's comedy very much. His comedic style, like I one of the people that I didn't like Ragnarok as much as a lot of people, but I'm also a Planet Hulk lover who was really pissed that they tried to shoehorn that into a Thor movie. And didn't even bring Beta Ray Bill in.
They had a statue of him.
They did.
But yeah, the comedy is definitely hit or miss. So they took the comedy from Thor Ragnarok, which I actually really liked, but they decided to dial it up to 11, and they just put way too much comedy into it. And a lot of the jokes fall so flat, and a lot of the jokes are reused way too many times.
Much, yeah.
Like they play a joke, and I guess they thought that joke was funny, so they were going to say it 8, 10, 20 more times.
Well, and I will say one thing that I absolutely hated about this movie is they just had Thor go through such a character arc in the last 3 movies and in the Infinity Saga, to have him return to even dumber than Thor 1.
Yeah, he unlearns all of his lessons. He becomes just a dumb jock that, in the first Thor, in the beginning, he was a gung-ho fighter that didn't care about his surroundings. He just wanted to win the battle, and he didn't care how much destruction he caused. And they really showboated that here. His character is just, they dumbed him down, and he does not care about anything else around him. He just cares about himself looking cool.
And it's bad. Like, I could not stand Thor in this entire movie. And this is a Thor film that I didn't care about the main character. I honestly couldn't care less about Thor right now. And Chris Hemsworth, talking about he wants to be in more movies than Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And I'm like, no, I do not want to see you in 9 to 10 different films, especially if you're going to keep going down this path. Like, if you're going to make him this dumb, uneducated Thor who didn't learn anything from all the lessons he learned, watching his brother, watching his friends, watching his entire mythos get destroyed, having Ragnarok happen, like having all this stuff happen, and you're still going to be this piece of shit, and even worse than the first time we saw him.
See, and I both agree and disagree with that statement, because I do want to see Chris Hemsworth as Thor return many more times, because I love Thor as a character, and I think Chris Hemsworth does a really good job. He enjoys the role. I do think his character needs to be done justice in the next iterations, though. He gets dumbed down, like you said, but when he returns, I want to see Thor rise up again, because he is a great character, and Chris Hemsworth is phenomenal. I can't speak highly enough.
Yeah, and let me reiterate this. I wasn't saying that I don't think Chris Hemsworth is good as Thor. I think this rendition of Thor was god-awful, and I do not want to see this Thor come back.
Oh, absolutely.
But if we go back to Infinity War Saga Thor, I'm all for it.
Fantastic. He shows his experience, what he's learned. He
is perfectly cast as Thor.
Yeah.
And Natalie Portman, I loved her in this movie too.
She actually has something to do in this movie.
Yes.
As opposed to the first 2 movies where she's kind of there and kind of helping out. This one, she actually had much more to do. And she actually does, Lady Thor, or I guess in this it's Mighty Thor.
Yeah.
She does it justice. She does a good job. The story itself does not do Mighty Thor justice, but she does a good job, and I think it looks like she's giving it her all, and she looks happy to be back in the role. It's great.
It was really awesome, really pleasant surprise, like getting all of that. I think Christian Bale kills it as Gore the God Butcher. There's a couple of scenes we'll have to talk about in the spoilers that I didn't like Gore. But there's a lot of gore in this movie that I loved. It was deep, it was dark, it was beautiful, it was what it needed to be.
I'd say every scene with Gore, minus a couple, probably the same ones.
Probably.
But Christian Bale kills it. I love, Gore the God Butcher as a character is really cool. And honestly, I feel like the movie just does not have enough of him. I feel like it feels like they cut scenes of Gore out. It's not enough Christian Bale. I feel like they could have done so much more to make the character hit harder and just be more enjoyable.
Well, and one of the things, which this is kind of spoiler territory-ish, but not really, it doesn't show him killing many gods.
No, every god that Gore kills is done off screen. You only see him physically kill, I think, one god in the movie. Other than that, the other gods he kills are either not seen or their corpses are seen, kind of just starting to evaporate into dust.
Yes.
So it's, for being the God Butcher, you don't really see a lot of butchering in this movie.
Yeah. That was my biggest downfall with the movie, honestly. I just wanted to see more of that, because you got this character who has this weapon that's so powerful it can kill gods and is terrifying all these gods, but you're not showing it, and you're only showing it creating creatures and not actually showing it being wielded and used.
Exactly. So for more, somewhat more of the highlights of character casting, I love the scenes we get to see the Guardians of the Galaxy in the movie. It was marketed as being a buddy
As Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Exactly, but like a lot of people probably guessed, the Guardians are only in it for less than 10 minutes. They make an excuse for them to separate and the Guardians disappear forever, but the scenes they are in, the scenes might not be the greatest, but the Guardians are awesome. It's good to see them on screen again. It makes me really excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yes.
I just wish there was more of them. Even though this is a Thor movie, it would have been nice to see them have some dynamic. But
I think Peter Quill, definitely the biggest standout of the Guardians in this. Like, I think he's getting to that character arc where he is been changed by what happened in Infinity Saga, especially losing Gamora, and you can see that.
Yeah.
You can see the way he's treating the Guardians as a family now, and it's more like the adaptation of the game version of Star-Lord now, where he sees them as a family, and I'm really excited for the next Guardians of the Galaxy because of that. They're really showcasing that bond between the Guardians together.
Exactly.
A lot.
That movie cannot come soon enough. But other than that, there really aren't many more good things about the movie. Like the action, some of the action looks cool. I love a lot of the stuff that Mighty Thor does with Mjolnir. It's kind of cool. We've never seen a broken Mjolnir reforge itself.
That was some cool scenes.
There's some cool stuff. Natalie just whips it and all the different shards go flying and then return to it. And then there's one scene specifically where she raises Mjolnir up in this up whip motion and whips it down, and all the shards separate into like this lightning whip.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. It reminds me of like, a chain sword, or maybe like the cane whip from Bloodborne or something. Just it's really exciting, but other than that, there's not much great. Maybe we should
I do like, and a lot of people, this is a really big divisive thing in all of Marvel movies. I do like the LGBT representation in this. Both having Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie be lesbian and having Korg be gay. I guess they're not human, so I don't know if they're really gay, but like two men.
The Cronin species.
Yeah, the Cronin species
is
are
shown as being it's two male Cronins, I guess.
Yes.
It actually doesn't seem like there are female Cronins, but it's really cool, and they kind of have a little fun thing at the end. I don't know if we want to talk about this now or not, but the spoilers as far as Korg.
We can a little bit later, but one of the things that I loved, there's a little interview where they were talking to Taika Waititi and Natalie Portman, and they're like, so with a lot of like some of the cast and stuff being gay and like you solely supporting the gay cast, like how gay is this movie? And Natalie Portman's like, should I tell them? And Taika Waititi's like, yeah. And she's like, it's super gay. I thought that was a really funny thing. Like Taika Waititi really put this out there as this is a really gay movie. And there is a lot of representation in this movie that I thought did really well. It wasn't as shoehorned as some of the other scenes in some of the other Marvel movies was, and it felt natural. Like
it made it feel like part of the universe, where it's not just we're putting it in there to mark the checkbox to appease the fans. It seems like the representation in this movie is actually part of the universe.
Yeah, like they just talk about it so nonchalantly in this with some of the characters. Like some of the talks between like Korg and Valkyrie and stuff about like her ex-partner and stuff that died and stuff like that is really just like really good work there.
That scene was really good.
So I guess we want to go into our ratings and then go into the spoilers.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm actually giving this a 64%. As you could tell, it's not much higher than I am number 4 for me. I think this movie has some good things and has a lot of good things going for it, but the downfalls of this movie are bad. They are so bad, I cannot move past it. This probably won't be a movie that I buy. This probably won't be a movie that I watch very often if I do rewatch this. I watch a lot of the Marvel movies over and over again, but this isn't going to be one of them that I do.
Yeah, I'd probably give it probably a similar score between 65 and 69. I wouldn't put it at a 70. I wouldn't give it a C grade. It's in the D category for me.
Yeah.
It has, it does have a lot of great moments, and I'd rewatch the movie, and I look forward to kind of picking it apart more when I rewatch it, and dissecting it. But I feel like it does have a lot more strengths than people realize. A lot of people are focusing on the negatives, and I mean, though there are negatives, by opinion, I do think it's better than some people think.
I definitely like, as far as the other Thor movies, I put this higher than Thor 2. The first Thor and Thor Ragnarok are better than this.
Oh, definitely. I feel like this Thor actually does an injustice to Thor 1.
Yeah.
Because the first Thor, a lot of people complain about like the Dutch angles and some of the directing, and for one, I think the first Thor is really good, especially compared to this one. It's a wonderful story, and I feel like people don't give that one enough credit.
I agree with that. So yeah, let's go ahead and go into the spoilers and stuff.
All right, spoiler talk. So where do we start with this? Well, let's just start at the beginning. So with Thor and hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy, we talked about how we didn't like his character arc and how he's just kind of dumbed down, and it really shows in his first scene. He is helping the Guardians to save this planet, and they have the setup buildings that are made out of crystal that are their
like their
icons,
church, their altar, where they do all their worship and to their gods or whatever.
And the enemies are taking control of that area, and they're trying to help the planet. So Thor's like, I'm going to take out all the enemies, and he does, but in the process he just has no regard for the buildings, destroys them all completely.
Yeah,
it's a mess.
And this is one of the things that, lore-wise, for Thor, I hated this next part. So the leader of that group is just trying to get Thor to leave. Like, you caused enough destruction, just leave. Get rid of these goats that I don't want anymore. These goats are nothing. That I don't care about them. They're annoying. They're take
given to him as gifts, but it's like a backhanded gift.
Yeah. And the thing that sucks is those goats are actually in Thor's lore.
Oh, in the comics, they're actually used for many things in Thor's comic book adventures, and like transportation, and they have a bigger part. And in this, they are reduced to a joke.
They can actually fly by themselves. They don't need Stormbreaker to cause them to fly with them. Mm-hmm. They when they die, they just reappear. So he uses them as food a lot. And I thought, with as much comedy as there was going to be in this, I thought at one point he was going to have to eat one of the goats, and he was going to cook one and eat one, and then it just appears back next to him afterwards. And I hated that they did the screaming goat thing that has been popular since 2012.
Yeah, they made the goats screaming goats, and every time they are on screen, they're doing the screaming goat thing. And like, fun fact about that, Taika actually included the screaming goats because he saw the video. He discovered the screaming goat meme. He'd never seen it before, and he saw like the Taylor Swift ones, the one Taylor Swift song Trouble.
Yeah.
He discovered those. He thought it was so funny that he decided to put it in the movie, and
it's a 10-year-old meme.
It would have been funny once or twice
10 years ago,
but after the 8th time,
it's
rough.
So annoying. It's bad.
The screaming goats is probably the worst part of the movie, and a lot of people will probably agree.
One of the other fun facts I was going to talk about earlier, most of the kids in this movie are kids of the actors and directors themselves.
That's right.
So all of Chris Hemsworth's kids, Natalie Portman's kids, Christian Bale's kids, and Taika Waititi's kids are all in this movie.
Yep, and actually there's an interview with Taika Waititi that he made a joke about it being like, it's free labor. Like,
right.
It's pretty funny, but I thought it was really neat that they kind of brought the family dynamic into it, and just each kid kind of got a time to shine. It was really fun.
And Chris Hemsworth is actually the one who first brought that up to Taika Waititi. He said he wanted to share some screen time with his daughter, India.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, well, we kind of wanted to throw a bunch of kids into this movie. And I think the kids section of this movie was another downfall of this movie.
Yeah.
Gore the God Butcher would not kidnap kids. He would just go kill the gods.
Yeah.
And that scene where Gore the God Butcher is talking to the kids and trying to scare them is the worst Gore the God Butcher scene in the entire movie. Hi, I'm scaring you, aren't I? I'm gonna kill Thor when he comes to try to save you.
Definitely reminds me of like those kids cartoons where the villain is like just taunting the kids.
And it's bad. It's the worst God butcher scene in this movie.
The other God butcher scene that I thought was a little weak. It's also one of the strongest scenes. The opening scene in the movie with Gore the God Butcher.
I
Phenomenal.
love that.
Great scene.
Yeah.
The part that falls flat for me is when he meets his sun god. One, the sun god kind of feels out of place. It's weird, but that scene is just so... It's made to, I mean, of course it's made to move the plot along, but it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
The god just doesn't feel right, and Gore kind of, he goes from this begging his god for help, he's, doing this, and then he instantly does a 180 turn of, I'm going to kill all the gods, and a lot of people are like, well, it's the sword corrupting him, and I feel like that's part of it, but the other part of it is Gore is that character. He is wanting it out for the gods because he's been betrayed, and I feel like they're showing it more as the sword is doing.
It seemed like in the comics that it was more because of the betrayal of the gods that Gore feels this way, and not just because of the sword. The sword gives him the power to be able to go with his ambitions of killing all the gods. But it's not the sword necessarily that's like, kill gods, kill gods. No, Gore wants to because of how much he has devoted his entire life to them and then just been shit on by them.
Yep.
And Gore in the comics does not have a daughter, which
I did not know that.
This character, which I guess we'll spoil it right now, Love is...
Yeah, Love is one of the entities in the comics, but they make it so that, Gore's daughter dies and then becomes reborn and is Love. The embodiment of
India
love.
Hemsworth.
Yes.
Thor's daughter.
So it's interesting.
Which is a brand new Marvel character. She was never been a character before. Love was never actually in anything before. This is a brand new Marvel character.
Well, I know in some of the comic lore that Love, the embodiment of love, that character is in some of the comic lore under like the tier under Eternity, because Eternity is one of the high up powers in the movie, and I know Love is beneath Eternity in the comics. It's a little bit different. It's lesser known.
I don't know anything about this, but from what I've heard, this, especially her being Gore the God Butcher's daughter, that's reincarnated by Eternity and is being raised up by Thor. That's an entire original idea.
This version of Love is very different than what the comics.
Because it would have been more like a being like Eternity in the comics, not a little girl that's going to raise up and being able to use Stormbreaker and
Mjolnir.
I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I hated the dynamic of Thor talking to his weapons.
Oh yeah, there's this one joke where Thor is reaching out trying to get Mjolnir back from Jane, and he's like, come here, and Stormbreaker kind of slides out of the side there and turns towards him and gets in his hand. He's like, I was calling you. It's really funny. Yeah. That first time, I thought it was very funny.
I giggled, but to the same extent, like it was funny because it was shocking, but it doesn't make any sense. They have never shown these weapons to have any sentience at all.
Well, and they actually made it a subplot where there is a literal love triangle between Thor, Mjolnir, and Stormbreaker. And Stormbreaker is jealous that Thor still has feelings for Mjolnir. It is really weird. And that one of the downfall scenes for me is later in the movie, Thor is trying to make it up to Stormbreaker and make him feel better. So he literally grabs a mug of beer and pours it on Stormbreaker, like giving him his first drink and trying to. And then he pats Stormbreaker on the top like it's his head, like you were friends.
Not a fucking dog. This is.
It's really bizarre, and the humor just falls flat with this whole subplot.
And you can't bring something into a movie franchise that's been established. Thor's been in 5 movies or 6 movies so far.
Yeah.
Because the first 3 Thor movies, and then he was in both Avengers Infinity Saga, and then Age of Ultron as well.
And the first one.
So 7 movies. He's been in 7 movies so far. Not one time have we seen any of these weapons have this kind of reaction or this sort of sentience. And you're gonna just add it now.
It feels really out of place.
It's like the Star Wars movie adding force powers
that have never existed.
That have never existed and were completely out of place. Like, you can't just No, you can't change established shit. Like,
Well, and see, I think there is a point where you can change established, take your own liberty on it. But I feel like in this case, it was one, unnecessary, but two, it was done for the sake of a joke.
yeah.
It's only in the movie to be a weird joke.
And if they just did that first one, I probably wouldn't have batted an eye at it. I would have giggled a little bit and then like, that was kind of funny. But because they kept repeating it throughout the entire movie, I was just like, you're giving Stormbreaker's not a character.
And that's where it goes into a lot of the comedy is reused over and over, and it just falls so flat.
Yeah. So one of the other fun facts, Russell Crowe really wanted to have a Greek accent in this film. Taika Waititi actually was against it at first.
Really?
Yeah, and wanted him to do a British accent. And so they actually made him film both scenes twice, or film all scenes that he was in twice. Once with a Greek accent and once with a British accent. And then Taika Waititi's like, I think you were right. And I'm like, how was he right? That was awful. That Greek accent was so trash.
I feel like what a waste of film. Like,
yeah.
They just, and honestly, like going into Zeus was okay at first.
Yes.
I think they turned Zeus more into a joke, and I think it would have been cool. Like they could have still showed that he was kind of cowering and scared of Gore the God Butcher, but they really just made it into a joke where Zeus is like, we're safe here. Let's just have an orgy. This is that we're all here to just, get down and dirty together. And then they make the even more joke when he steps out from behind his podium. I mean, he has this weird little skirt on and this Halloween store costume.
And he's prancing down the stairs. And I'm like, Zeus is never that
It's
way.
not Zeus. It's just not really done well.
No, and honestly, like a lot of that whole thing with like the gods and stuff, like they just made a mockery of all the gods except for the Norse gods. Like it just really seemed like they didn't care what any of these gods' lore were, especially because like Zeus and like Hercules and a couple other characters are in like a lot of the comics, especially Hercules. Hercules is such a big part.
Oh, he's a big part in the Thor comics.
Yeah.
But they really drive home the idea that all gods only care about their desires.
Yeah.
And just disregard all of their followers. Except for, Thor, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, mostly because he's also, very
But even like when he's fighting for the right things and Gore even sees that and says that, he still wants to kill him. And I'm
exactly. You'd think that Gore would change his mind when Thor shows up to save the kids, and he'd be like, oh, maybe not all gods are so bad. And I feel like a lot of that conflict between Thor and Gore could have been solved through a conversation.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like Gore the God Butcher thinks that all the gods are so selfish that they wouldn't come to save anybody, and that no one saved him and no one saved his daughter. So the first thing he does is steal a bunch of kids to see if the gods come and save them, when he has no faith that they would ever do that. That is the biggest plot hole in this movie, and it bothers me to a core. I'm like, you put this kid scene in here and put this plot hole in here just to have your guys' kids in this movie, and they didn't need to be in this movie. And if they were actual like the only kid that I actually thought was good in this movie was Heimdall's son,
Axel.
Yes.
That was a good character.
But I did not like the whole Axel.
They had a weird moment where they have a quick one line where Thor calls Axel Astrid. Says, hey, we need to save, talking to Astrid. And Astrid cuts him off and goes, it's Axel, by the way.
I love Guns N' Roses.
He changed his name. And I feel like it's a weird moment. It just doesn't feel like it fits. I understand being your true self and having your name means something to you, but it's played off as this little one-line joke where it's like it's not necessary.
That comes back a couple of times. Like that joke does come back where he calls him Axel, and someone else cuts him off and says Axel later too.
I missed that part. I only remember the first one.
I was just like, why does this matter?
It just felt out of place.
Well, and they gave Thor extra powers in this movie too. This scene sucks for me because I both love the scene and I hate the scene. I hate the last fight where he gives all of the kids the power of Thor.
And it's weird because is it the power of Thor? He uses Zeus's lightning bolt to give them the power of Thor. So they all have like Zeus's lightning. It's all the yellow lightning,
but
which it probably doesn't matter that much.
But it turns whatever object they're wielding basically into Mjolnirs.
Yeah, they say like give them the power of Thor for just a moment though, like just for a short time.
Okay, if you could have done this, why didn't you do this in Infinity War?
Well, a lot of people ask that question about a few of the plot points in this movie. Why didn't he give anyone else powers in Avengers against Thanos? And then also the main plot line of the movie is Gore finding eternity so he could wish all the gods dead. The first person that arrives to eternity gets to make any wish they want. So why did the Avengers waste all this time trying to go back and get the Infinity Stones when they could have just went to eternity and wished everything to go back?
Yeah.
It's weird, and I understand why this plot point, no one knew in the past that they were ever going to bring up eternity.
How in the world is Stormbreaker the key to get to eternity that has been there for eternity when Stormbreaker was just created like 10 years ago?
That is, I actually do have an answer for that. Okay. Is because Stormbreaker is not the key, the Bifrost is the key. So what they were saying in the movie is it was misinterpreted or took wrong, but it's the Bifrost that is the key to open eternity. So Heimdall always had, because he controlled the Bifrost, he could have gone to eternity anytime he wanted. But
so Axel could have opened it for Gore.
Yes. Well, if he is able to wield the power of the Bifrost.
Which, I mean, he does teleport the kids.
Doesn't he do that with Stormbreaker?
Maybe. I can't remember fully now, but...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sends them back with Stormbreaker.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Axel may do the teleporting itself. I think it's using Stormbreaker as the conduit for the Bifrost.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I love that Stormbreaker can summon the Bifrost.
Well, and I didn't like that the Gore God Butcher's sword could use Stormbreaker. Like, why would the evil sword that can kill gods be worthy enough to wield Stormbreaker?
Well, Stormbreaker doesn't have the same enchantment as Mjolnir to be wielded. So, like, that's...
But, like, you still have to have the powers of the Bifrost or whatever, like, I would think. You can't just use Stormbreaker to access the Bifrost.
Well, that actually is one of Stormbreaker's thing, is it's powerful enough to access the Bifrost.
Just anyone who touches it can use the Bifrost and knows how to use it?
Essentially, that's the way it's kind of put off. Like, when Stormbreaker's created in Infinity War, Petrie, the dwarf, talks about how Stormbreaker is able to summon the Bifrost. Like, it is part of Stormbreaker's lore in the MCU.
Okay.
But the Bifrost is the key to eternity, not Stormbreaker itself. So Gore just needed a way to get the Bifrost, which he saw the opportunity with Stormbreaker. But I still don't understand how Gore could take Stormbreaker from Thor.
Yeah,
honestly. And
how Thor couldn't call it back.
Yeah, it really didn't make sense.
I also, like, I loved seeing Mighty Thor, and I loved all of Natalie Portman's stuff with, like, trying to come up with a catchphrase. I thought that was kind of funny, and, like, doing all those things.
Unfortunately, her catchphrase fell a little flat at the end. Yeah. But anyway, go on.
I do not like, I feel like they had to, but I don't like the way that she was killed off.
Well, They kind of diverged from the comics in that sort, where like Mjolnir in the comics is actually helping Jane survive as Lady
Not
Thor.
pulling from her life force.
Whereas this one, it is showing that the more she uses Mjolnir, she is dying a lot faster, even though it's helping keep her alive. Like it's fighting its reasons for keep. Like it's really weird.
It was really contradictory, and it really was like weird, and I mean, it was a really nice touch to see her in Valhalla, and it was a really nice touch to see Heimdall.
Oh yeah, like I thought it was cool seeing Valhalla, and that end credit scene. Some people find unnecessary, but I liked it. It was kind of a nice closure, and it gave hope for more, I guess.
Yeah. I knew it was coming as soon as they announced Zeus that we were getting Hercules, so I was not shocked at all to see Hercules in the end credit scene.
Oh yeah, and actually I'm okay with that.
I'm actually pretty excited for Hercules coming into the MCU.
That could be really fun. Is there anything else you had in highlights or downfalls?
Fight on the Dark Planet where everything was black and white except for the colors.
That dark planet. I remember what I wanted to talk about. So the fight on that planet was awesome. Visually stunning, beautiful. I loved that fight scene. And with the planet being so small, and they're like, you could see them like running around the planet and fighting. Weird. It really reminded me of like Super Mario Galaxy running around. And it's like that's not a criticism. I think that was really cool. It was visually just an awesome scene. And I'm a lot like to go off of visuals. I feel like the visual effects in this movie generally were really good. There are a few moments that look a little off. Like there's a scene with Korg that his face looks kind of funky, like it looks more plastic than rock. Especially
when he's just the face.
Exactly. But other than that, like a lot of people are kind of shitting on this movie for the visuals, and I really like the CGI visual effects were actually, I think, really good, and I feel like the visual effects artists are not given enough credit for these movies. They work way too hard and are not compensated enough.
I actually originally thought that Natalie Portman got that buff for the movie.
Oh yeah, it's if you look at behind the scenes, you can actually see like little tracking dots on her arms where they made her buffer.
It looks good.
It was.
I thought she just really got that rip.
And her costume was cool, and actually Thor's first two costumes were really cool. He had this cool leather sleeveless jacket, and then his costume where he has this fur going on and looked legit.
Yeah.
But then he goes into his overcompensating costume where it's this blue and gold looking junk. And that's where I kind of have a problem with all the other costumes in the movie. Valkyrie's costume looks amazing.
Yes.
But that Thor costume, the blue and gold, and then a lot of the gods' costumes, I feel like look like cheap toys. They're something you would buy at Spirit Halloween.
I honestly think Valkyrie and Lady Thor, Mighty Thor, were the best parts of this movie. That and Gore, the God Butcher, obviously.
I'd probably agree with you. Yeah, they're not given enough credit.
I actually liked Valkyrie way more in this movie than I did in Ragnarok, which was kind of surprising to me. Like, I actually felt like...
See, and I'm on the opposite spectrum where I liked her better in Ragnarok, and that's because in this movie, I feel like her character wasn't explored to the fullest it could have been.
And I agree that
I feel like it
could have had more. And, like, I really think that they really need to stop with these, like, almost nudity scenes just because Chris Hemsworth is a fucking god of a man. Like... we don't need to have Zeus flick off his entire clothes and have everyone faint and everyone like, oh my god, kind his dick. Oh.
Chris Hemsworth, I know, he's talked about in the past not being a huge fan of that. How he's like, they make him shirtless just because they want a shirtless Chris Hemsworth scene. Well, and I think this movie really drove it home as being so frustrating. Because, like, I'm not upset about nudity in movies at all.
No, I'm not either.
But the way they go about it and the way that...
It's forced.
It's really forced. And then also, if you look at Thor in that scene, and then it shows the ladies of the scene, Valkyrie and Lady Thor, and they are muted, covered head to toe in, like, tarps.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a weird... Like, imagine if it were the opposite. Let's say it was Thor in the stands wearing a big old cape.
Yeah.
And it was one of the women getting their clothes flicked off. It would have been talked down about so badly by the media. But since it's Thor, it's okay.
Well, and the thing is like, and Chris Hemsworth has talked a lot about this, like the workout regimen he has to do to get into the shape, and like going without water for 2 days before filming to get all of his like extra water weight to go down so he looks even more muscular.
I didn't know he did that. That's insane. That's so unhealthy.
It's extremely unhealthy. Like the things, like a lot of people are like, oh, they're making people do these like crazy things. I was like, have you heard what the guys have to do to get that ripped? Because it's ungodly. Like one of my favorite interviews I heard recently was I don't know if you watched It's Always Sunny. But Mac from It's Always Sunny, when he got into this like huge rip shape, there was an interview where someone asked him like, how do I get in shape like that? He's like, all right, here's the thing. All right, you like good food? You can't have it. All right, you like alcohol? You can't have it. Any drugs? Can't have it. You have a family? You can't see them. You have a job? Oh, you can't have that either. So you know the workout trainer from Magic Mike, he needs to come to your house 2 to 3 times a day to force you to work out. You need to be doing all these workouts. You need to go without water before filming. You need to do this. You need to do that. And he just went on. And he's like, you can't have a body like this. This is not a normal body. The amount of shit I have to do to get into this shape for your entertainment is not obtainable by a human with actual needs.
It's not a realistic depiction of how to get a body like that.
Yeah,
to get a body like that in real life, it takes a lot longer and it is a lot harder.
Yeah.
To maintain for a person that is not being forced to do it in a limited amount of time.
Yes.
For TV.
Who's getting everything paid for them and doing all these training things and doing all these things. Like, you're not gonna get a Thor body just because you want it.
And I mean, they're working these actors and actresses to the bone, and it's probably gonna kill them instead of actually make them healthier. But,
yeah.
My last downfall of the movie, kind of ending on for downfalls anyway. I like that they brought back Luke Hemsworth and Matt Damon.
Yeah, I loved that.
I love that they brought them back. I thought that scene was great because I loved it in the Ragnarok film, kind of giving us a little plot summary of what happened in the last movie. But the part that drove down that scene for me, Melissa McCarthy busts through, and I'm just like, damn it.
I thought it was still entertaining, honestly.
And I like, as an actress, I like a lot of her comedy stuff. Like, I thought in Identity Thief she was hilarious, and she has a lot of good moments. But when she showed up in this, it's like, really, like, but why?
I liked it in the way because it is so bad, and they're such bad actors for this play. It's almost like the Ember Island players on Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, the bad depictions of these characters.
Yeah.
Like, these are the worst depictions of these characters. And they are making fun of that, and they are doing that. So I actually thought that worked really well, having her be Hela, because it was so offbeat that it was so bad that it reminded me of that kind of style. And I think that comedy hit for me for those reasons.
I can see it. Like, I definitely laughed during the scene, but I was just like...
Well, and... a way to get her into the MCU, because I couldn't see her being in the MCU other than that kind of thing.
It's the way to, like, hey, throw them.
Yeah.
Any more fun facts, or
I don't have any more fun facts. I think I said pretty much all of the highlights and downfalls. The special effects, like, especially like Zeus when he was like throwing his lightning bolt around and stuff, I thought that was really cool.
It was cool. I also enjoyed seeing all the gods in the background. The visual effects for them looked kind of really cool. And I know Taika Waititi did the motion capture for the Cronin god, and I just love that he is sitting on a throne of scissors. It makes me think of Game of Thrones, this Iron Throne, but the fact that it's a throne of scissors because he's Rock. My last little fun fact I enjoyed about it was at the end, I love the scene they have between Korg and his love, which is named Dwayne, who is a Rock Cronin, so he is literally Dwayne the Rock. So it's just it's a fantastic, like...
I think one other thing that I will say is, especially for this being Love and Thunder, and for all the posters being metal posters, and for them thinking like the as Guardians of the Galaxy and having Guardians of the Galaxy always having such good soundtracks, this movie did not hit, and they did not play any like good songs. Like all the fight scenes, I'm like, why are you not playing a Guns N' Roses song right now?
Yeah.
Why are you not playing an awesome metal song during this fight? They're playing some generic ass song.
Music. And whenever we did hear Guns N' Roses, it was great. But I also think they're trying to do what they did with Ragnarok, bringing like the cool 80s aesthetic. I kind of wish they leaned more back into the Asgardian medieval aesthetic and leave the 80s rock fun music stuff to the Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like still have a little bit of it for Thor because, Taika started that with Ragnarok, but I feel like they could have dialed it down and brought more of the Asgardian aesthetic into it. Still include cool, awesome songs, but visually bring it down. There's so many bright colors and all over the place, kind of jarring at some points.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I thought was one of the best dynamics, was just the clashing of darkness and colors was a cool kind of aspect. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this movie.
I think so. So I definitely you know, check it out if you want to. I think it's worth watching to give your own opinion on it. But I think that's it. And next week we are going into a kind of a new fun format. Instead of a normal movie review, we are going to be doing a review / comparison of an original versus a remake. And those are
The Karate Kid, both the original 1984 and the
2010 remake.
Yes. I believe that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are going to be our next comparison. Well, at the end of each month, we're going to do 3 episodes, and then we're going to do this comparison kind of style. And we want to compare remakes versus original, or movies that were based off of each other, or maybe even we've talked about possibly doing like foreign versus American versions, like Wreck versus Quarantine, possibly.
Yeah, something kind of a little different. If you guys have any ideas, post it down in the comments and let us know what you think you would want to see compared. Something really fun we could do. So that's it. We'll be signing off and coming back at you with the Karate Kid.
Yes, the Karate Kid, or the Karate Kid versus the Kung Fu Kid.
The Kung Fu Kid.
All right.
All right.
We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening.